Lukas Nelson.
I'm such a big fan, Lucas.
Oh man,
You know what's funny?
Lukas Nelson.
I'm such a big fan, Lucas.
Oh man,
You know what's funny? He can't say he's a big fan of mine because he travels all the time. But I like that he tried.
No, I just.
He's like, I'm such. Well,
No, I was gonna say because when we met at Pebble, it was a good vibe, and then when you posted some amazingly beautiful things, and it just made me feel so good, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Lucas is just the nicest dude, and we met like humans. It wasn't even a work or
no, we were just hanging
out.
Yeah.
And so I remember we're eating like sausages over on the little table or something, and we're all just like, and they're like, "Hey, Lucas Nelson here. You want to come and play?" And Lucas gets up, and he's just in his, deal. Gets up, grabs a guitar. And it was like going to church. And I was a fan of your music already, but watching you play live, there was just something about, and I'm jaded. I get to see everybody that's good all the time.
Yeah.
But there was something about that performance that is unidentifiable by pointing a finger at it. But I was like, there's only 2 or 3 times in the past 5-6 years I felt like that with music. And it was you.
Well, Clint Eastwood was there, so I was trying.
Real pressure.
There's a lot of. we were all. I was in awe of that guy, and no, but when something, I've always felt most comfortable in some ways just with an acoustic guitar, and connecting in an intimate setting like that. It is a nice format. And what did we start with? I think we started with.
Did you Find Yourself?
We did do Find Yourself.
That song?
Yeah.
My wife and I have listened to that thing 500, because she was with me. We were all together. We've probably listened to that song 500 times.
Yeah, you were sitting with Jordan and that crew. And Jake Owen was there. And who else was there? There was another friend of ours.
Ben Rector.
Ben Rector, was there. Yeah. Those guys are all. It was a very cool vibe, and that intimate setting with all those golfers and musicians there, it was, it lends itself. It was actually a pretty good sounding room there for that too.
I just can't wait for people to hear you play. Now you have a new record out today, and what's interesting is I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you wrote all 12 of these songs yourself.
Yeah.
Where is your write? Where does it happen for you? Are you on the road all the time, and are you riding in a bus somewhere, or do you?
Yeah, or on an airplane, or I've been writing with Ernest recently. He's a great artist that we met on the road with Jelly Roll. Jelly was doing a show with Dad, and I happened to be on the road with Dad for a minute because I had some weeks off, and I went and joined him on his tour, and Ernest and Jelly Roll were there. So I like writing with other people, but I'm really good at just sitting down and writing a song in like 30 minutes generally. When it comes quick, and then I'm writing for my show. I'm writing for my audience, and I'm thinking about my audience when I write a song, and what kind of rhythms and sing-along choruses do I want, and what kind of even pauses in the song to let them respond in some way, So.
Are you a perfectionist in your writing, or are you a guy that you felt it, that's how you felt when you wrote it, that's the song? But you go back
I'll
3
go
days
back.
later, yeah?
I'll go back sometimes, and if I feel like something is better said some other way, then I'll write it that way. And there are times when I'll be in the studio recording the song and singing the vocals, and I'll think of a better way to say some phrase, and I'll change it right there.
What about melody and lyrics? What is your go-to first, or is it a theme?
Melody and lyrics to me go very closely together.
What comes first?
Lyrics often precede the melody, but very closely. It's a fraction of a second. It's like, the time it takes to perceive the world around you in a way, because as soon as I hear the phrase, I start internalizing the syllables, the structure of the phrase, and then adding a melody to it pretty dang quickly, without an instrument oftentimes. I was writing actually with a friend of mine, and their approach was to write the groove first, John Oates, and my approach is to write the lyrics first. and so it's you know, so it's kind of good when someone else is good at grooves and one other guy's good at lyrics. But for me, I write the lyrics first generally, and I'll think of something funny like you know, some clever twist of phrase, you know. What was it? Katie said something, you know, earlier. My manager was like, I haven't seen a Friday in forever. You know, what does that mean? But you turn it into a song. I haven't seen a Friday in forever. Well, it could be a drinking song. It could be a, you know, it's a work song. You know,
What is
work
your
never ends.
what's the lane that you feel most comfortable writing? Is it tempo wise? Do you like to write slow songs? Do you like to write bangers? If someone's like, you get to write the best song possible, what is it for you? Where do you feel most comfortable?
I do enjoy writing ballads. I think I tend to. There's a few songs that I've written in the past that I feel like have connected deeply to people. "Forget About Georgia" is a song like that. There's songs on my self-titled record that still get requested quite often on our live show. I "Set Me Down on a Cloud," and "Find Yourself" is a more upbeat song that people. That's my favorite song to play live because it seems to. It's an evergreen song. It's a song that I never get tired of playing. I'm always thinking about live shows when I'm playing a show. You know, so if I'm thinking about a moment in the show where I can rock, 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 bounce, 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 dance, 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 and then bring it down into a moment where then I really can reach a heart or two, and that just connects people more deeply into the lyrics, into the, you know, when you strip everything down, they focus more on what's being said, and a lot of times I think that's important, you know.
Can you talk about your Aunt Bobby for a second?
Yeah.
Because I was talking with Amanda Shires, and
Yeah, Amanda's great. Yeah.
and she did the record with your aunt, and then your aunt passed away
Mm.
after they had finished the record. And so I spent a lot of time listening to the record, and your aunt she wrote and she played, you know, in the same band with you, and even your dad.
Yeah.
What was she like as a person?
She was a literal angel, like an angel on earth. I've never before or since met anyone as kind and gentle and compassionate. She had that old Southern charm, you know. Really, she was beautiful, and she stayed beautiful till she was 91. You know, and I think that there were a lot of old men who had big crushes on her out there. But she was also very strong and a musical force of nature. She was. Dad always says she was the best musician of his band, and she is a great mind for music. She played on one of my tracks. She played. I have a song called "Just Outside of Austin," and I was lucky enough to have her on that song. She plays the introduction to the song, and then, of course, throughout the song. And it took her maybe 2 minutes to write this little part when we were recording, and it was genius. As she was a musical genius, and still influences my piano approach and taught me a little bit about piano when I was growing up. So she had like you say, it's church every time with her.
Do you feel like with you and all the instruments that you play and how you grew up, nature nurture, meaning were you born with a little bit of it, or was it just you were surrounded by it, and maybe you were just born a blank slate and because you were surrounded by it all the time? What do you think nature nurture in your music, the hard work that you put in and natural ability?
That's a good question, because I've heard that there's a theory that we carry genetic memory in our DNA, and I'm not sure if that's true or not. I've heard it from a number of sources that would indicate that it's possible, but I do know that I've been around it so much that and fallen in love with it. I mean, you can be around it and it just doesn't choose you, you know. And I got lucky enough that it chose me. Music has saved my life on a number of occasions and brought me, just kind of rerouted me from my excess and reminded me that I have a purpose. And in a way, that's like why people go to church, why people have religion. And so music has become that for me. It's become a beacon of you know, of a path to follow. And some people follow it, but peripherally, you know. Some people will say, okay, I'll follow this path, but I'm really following it because I want the lifestyle, or I want this or that. And the reason my band name is Promise of the Real is because I want to see that. I want to see that on the marquee every day and remind myself of why I do it. It's about keeping the integrity of the purpose of my life. You know, Promise of the Real is, okay, you remember that this is the real reason you started playing music, and so don't get pulled away in all these different directions. It's very easy to get pulled away. I see a lot of my friends and family and people that came before me get trapped in these different on these different paths that lead to dead ends in the music industry, and so I didn't want that for myself. So I remind myself every day with my band name, Promise of the Real, that this is why I'm doing it, you know.
Is it a self-awareness, or is it a learned self-awareness, or is it that you have had experiences now where you're like, I just don't want to go back to that?
Both, maybe. I don't know how self-aware I am in comparison to anyone else, but I do know that I've made mistakes and I don't want to make them again.
Do you feel like mistakes don't make good music? Like, I was always afraid to go to therapy because I was like, if I go to therapy and I start to get right, I'm not going to be on the air and have all these really compelling things to say.
The irony of that is that I make better music now that I can reflect in a calm and peaceful manner. I can't, back when I was going through it, back when I was in those days, which actually this album really chronicles the first few songs of the album. The album details a character who goes through the same journey that I did. And in the beginning, it's all party, right? And Alcohallelujah, you know, there's a defiance and, you know. And I realized, though, that it wasn't the high that got me to these places of creativity. It was the finding my way back home. And that at these moments when I was home in my mind, when I say home, I mean the clarity. You have to have clarity in order. There were only flashes of clarity that allowed me to write songs that, you know, that helped me look back and process the moments that I had. Find Yourself, for example, was a breakup song, but I didn't write it as I was writhing in agony. You know, I wrote it as I found my way back. I hope you find yourself before I find somebody else was a statement of returning to where I was strongest and taking the power that I have back from this person who I had let take my power away from me. You know, I know the love that I deserve. You know, so my best work comes when I'm looking back at the darkness and taking the light from it.
Does that sometimes get you through the darkness, knowing that one day you're going to get out of it, and you're going to have a perspective and even an empathy for somebody else going through it?
Yes, because, I mean, in my darkest moments were more younger. I had a lot of my brother passed away when I was really young. It was heavy on the whole family. It was a very intense and painful way to go. And I think that influenced my upbringing in some ways. I think it influenced why I chose certain paths and how I wanted to relate to my parents. I didn't want to go down too dark a path. I didn't want to repeat similar mistakes. And so, but in my own pain, and I realized there's a great song that I actually did with my dad that George Harrison wrote called "All Things Must Pass." And I remember being in the darkest place and that repeating in my mind, that phrase that you just got to, everything changes, everything morphs and moves and goes from up to down to up to down. The pendulum, when it swings one way, has to swing the other. And so if I can just stay steady and persevere and get through this time, I'm going to find the light at some point. And so that's just been my process of getting through any kind of hardship, always. And it reminds me that I have the strength to do it when I do, and it's also very, a lot of good music can come from that. A lot of good, reminding yourself that your best self is your best self, and there's the trapping is, the temptation is, the idea is that you got to fly into the sun in order to be who you need to be. And I don't believe that's true at all. There's a song called Icarus on my record, and it is sort of about that. It's like, it's a funny song, but it's, Icarus was a Greek in the myth where the sun believes he's invincible and that he can fly close or even into the sun. And his father keeps warning him, look, man, you're going to hurt yourself. And finally, the wax on his feathers melt and he falls to his death. And a lot of young people believe that they're invincible and that they can fly into the sun and that nothing will happen to them. They can't imagine not being around. And that's why so many people get lost, I think. And so, my art is about always staying true to where I believe perseverance is possible. And my dad was a good beacon of inspiration for that as well.
How do you feel about your voice? And I ask that because I can't stand to listen to my voice because, and I do this at a pretty high level.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I hear it all the time. I don't like it. When you hear yourself, are you like, Dad, Lukas Nelson can sing? How do you feel about listening to your own voice?
Sometimes, sometimes I think, oh, that was pretty good. And then other times I think, turn that shit off. But, and it depends. Like, I'm getting better at singing all the time. I'm the last record that I did, is not, I listen to this record more than other records that I've done. Now I'm at the point now where I don't want to turn it off. I can just, it's like anything. You just, if you're good enough, here, I was talking about this the other day. If your ear is good enough to detect when it sounds bad, you're 90% there, right? And that's what I tell people who always want to sing. I say, if you've never sang before and you sing into a microphone and you say, oh, that sounds terrible, you're actually in good shape, because the people who are really bad singers can't tell.
They don't know.
So if you can just get it to the point where you kind of like it, or you can tell it's in tune, or look, there's a lot of strange and magical voices out in the world. There's Neil Young has a strange and magical voice that's vulnerable and shaky but right on key and right in pitch. Joe Walsh. All these different types of voices exist, but I think what's important is the soul behind it. And I think what's important, and I mean that by the person, I think the experience, the passion, and then making sure you're on pitch and in key is obviously the most important.
I only asked that because your voice is one of the best things I've ever heard in my whole life. And I was like, man, even if he doesn't, maybe even if Lukas thinks sometimes maybe that means I'm not so bad. I'm using that for me, maybe it means I'm not so bad.
No, well, the thing is that, and my dad always told me this, he said, because he's got an interesting, different voice as well. And I think that he always said, don't be afraid to be weird or don't be afraid to be different. you know, with your voice. Leon Russell's another example. They were best friends. It's okay if your voice isn't normal, quote unquote, you know, because you know what? That makes you unique and uniquely who you are, and people resonate with people who aren't afraid to be who they are, I think, you know.
I never thought about, as you're mentioning Leon Russell or George Harrison, I never thought about the exposure to the great artists that you also just had, just that were just around you, that either your dad knew or you're playing on tour with, or, and you're such a normal dude. I mean this in the best way. I just never thought about you hanging out with a Beatle, or even knowing a Beatle, or Leon Russell, but that's, you know, people that your dad knew.
Yeah, I mean, look, George, I didn't know very well. I mean, I don't think I ever met George Harrison. He lived on Maui, interestingly enough, which I grew up in Maui. But I know his son. I know a lot of, but like George, I never met. Leon, I did. Actually, I met Leon Russell, and actually had an adult sit-down conversation with him just before he passed, randomly on the island of Curacao, off the tip of Venezuela. And I was so surprised. It was a gig that we did. It was on this island, and it was so random, and Leon Russell was playing it too. And we met at this hotel. There's nobody else around. We had a dinner, and he was great. And then I was grateful because I'd never had my own one-on-one time with a lot of these guys. I'll have very quick hellos. My dad will know them. They'll come on the bus. They'll hang out with Dad. When I was young, they were all smoking and drinking, and so, you know, I wasn't even allowed to be around that a lot of the times. But my favorite moments were the artists that when I was a kid I was also into, like Leon, like Ray Charles.
I was going to ask about Ray Charles next.
Yeah.
And you met Ray?
Oh yeah, Ray was. I've never seen Dad when Ray sang. So they did a birthday tribute to Dad. I think it was his 80th, maybe, or it could have been his 70th. But I think it might have been 80. I can't remember. But every decade he does. Like this last one was the 90th, and it was an incredible birthday celebration where all of his friends came around. There were 30 amazing artists on there, but one of them, Ray, was there, and it was Ray and Leon and Dad, and they sang A Song for You, which is a beautiful song. I've been so many places in my life and time. You know that song, do you? Well, if you don't, go and listen to it because it's a beautiful. And there's a YouTube video of Dad and Ray Charles and Leon Russell. And Dad sings the first verse, I believe. Leon sings the second, and then they just let Ray take the rest of the song. And I'm getting emotional thinking about it because when I was a few years later, when it went on YouTube and YouTube became a thing, I pulled it up for Dad, and I said, "Dad, you remember this?" And we sat and watched it, and he cried. It doesn't happen very often. You know, he's a very, I mean, not saying he's not. He's just, you know, he's from the quiet generation. He's a cowboy, but I could see that he was so moved that his hero Ray Charles was paying tribute to him in that way, and so those are the moments that really stick out. Muhammad Ali and Chris Christopherson coming by the house. Those are the real moments, you know, that stick
crazy.
out. You know,
That's crazy. Well, let me say this about your record. First of all, I'll say it again in case you just turned it on. I'm a massive Lukas Nelson fan. I could do this for 3 hours. I often do it when you're not here, just practicing when you are here. I do it. Yeah, I just talk to the chair like it's you waiting for this time.
All right, Bobby.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
You know what? You have me at a disadvantage, so I promise you, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna listen to all your podcasts.
God, can you imagine?
I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna be so well versed. That when we play golf next, I'm gonna be like, you remember?
Please don't. You'll like me less. So you know we're good how it is. We're just two dudes who like to hang out. Here's what we're gonna say, everybody. His album is out today. Sticks and Stones. He's all over as well. Go to lucasnelson.com. He's all through where this show is, everywhere from, you know, Montana, Oregon, Idaho, Utah, Colorado. Just looking at some of the dates coming up. Kansas City, St. Louis. If you're hearing us, he's probably coming there. Just the best. And as good as he is here, like, even a better dude. I'm telling you.
Oh, hey.
Just that, dude. You're the best. You are.
It's mutual. Thank you, brother.
Super pumped that you came in.
And if you don't see us on the road coming to your town, just know we're booking the whole rest of the years. so
Still more to come.
We're going to be out a lot. And if you don't see your town on the tour, don't worry. We're coming.
Lukas Nelson and Promise of the Real.
Yeah.
Album's out, Sticks and Stones, all over the road. And there he is. Thank you, Lukas. That was great. There he is, Lukas Nelson.
It's about